afternoon or evening, wherever you are. This is Keith Williams of Shiloh Ministries and another episode of Word to the Wise. Today, I'm going to get into something very basic, but I believe that is something very, very, very important for us as believers to know and understand about the scriptures that we have, who we are in the kingdom, and just to clear up some misinterpretations and those kind of things, because today we are going to be studying and looking at just basic Hebrew. And I'm going to say this right from the beginning. I am not a Hebrew scholar. So let's get that on the table and get that out of the way. So there may be some of you out there that says, well, I know he's not a Hebrew scholar, and that's fine, you're right. I'm just confirming that for the sake of full disclosure. However, I can read. And since I can read, I have read some things about who we are in the kingdom. And I'm just going to say in the kingdom. So, why should we look at Hebrew? Well, there's a reason that we should look at Hebrew, because for the most part, a lot of the church, we are stuck in a Greek mindset. And I'm going to say Greek, and I'm going to use that term as a general term, for just everything other than a Hebrew mindset, a Hebrew interpretation. So when I say Greek, I'm using it for everything else, whether you think about, Latin for maybe Catholics and those kind of things. It's still, I'm putting it under the label of a Greek mindset. Okay, so let's start with that. What is a Greek mindset? Well, a Greek mindset, for the most part, is as far as the Greek hermeneutics is concerned, and the hermeneutics is not, it's a big word, but it's not a frightening word. It just means principles of interpretation. And so if you don't know, what we call the Old Testament was written in Hebrew originally. The New Testament is written in Greek. So many of you have a Strong's Concordance, and we're always looking up words. If you're looking up words in the Old Testament, you're in the Hebrew, and if you're looking up words in the New Testament, it's all in Greek. Okay, so it's all Greek to us for the most part. So what's the difference? Well, let me tell you the big difference. There's two ways of framing things in the Greek. The first is an allegorical truth. And for the most part, that's about 75% of the interpretation in Greek. In other words, the person or the interpretation it's about creative imagination. Fables is another word that comes to mind. Symbolism. So a lot of people think that, the Bible is just, those stories really aren't true. There are a lot of fables, and people have a tendency to go down that road. But you as the wise, we're not going down that road anymore. We are going to detach from that kind of thinking, and we're going to come into an understanding of why the Hebrew is important to us. Because I'm going to tell you right now, when we get into it down the road here in just a little bit, you will begin to see how important having a Hebrew understanding of the scriptures that God has given us is to you and to myself. Okay, and the other part for that Greek hermeneutics is 25% of the word they say is just it's literal truth. In other words, only 25% of the word is really true. The rest is fables, they're cute stories, and those kind of things. So if you are a believer, I think you should be seeing we have a problem. We have a huge problem. Because not only if you stay in that allegorical interpretation, so you're saying 75% of it's fables. And in my mind, no wonder so many of God's people, they read the word and they think, oh, or they have in the back of their mind, well, maybe this stuff isn't really true. It's a good trick of the enemy. And we're not going to be tricked by darkness any longer. God's bringing us into some light. Okay? So, another thing that happens with the Greek, because you have these two different levels, the literal truth and the allegory, but they say that both of these truths operate on a separate plane, but they can never be true at the same time. Well, that's a problem. Here's the manifestation of that problem. In the church, we begin to think, and here's what you hear in the church. Well, somebody will read a scripture and then they'll say, or look to someone and say, was that literal or was that spiritual? Is this right or is this wrong? And we have this right, wrong, left, right mindset. And so you can already start to see, I think I can see some of the wheels turning in some of your minds where you can say, hey, that sets up conflict in the church. Now we're in conflict because you'll talk to a brother and he'll say, well, I read this scripture and it means this. And then maybe you'll have read the same scripture and you'll go, no, it doesn't mean that, it means this. And now both of you are banging against each other and saying one thinks he's right, the other one says, no, you're wrong. And it sets up this conflict with us and in us. Because the Greek mindset is somebody has to be right and somebody has to be wrong. And therein lies the conflict. There's no mention that, let's try this one for size. Maybe you're both right. That concept never creeps into a Greek mindset. It's either I'm right and you're wrong, or I'm wrong and you're right. And now we're at odds with one another. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this video. It's very basic. This is a very basic understanding so that we can move into a higher level of understanding who we are in God's kingdom. What is he doing? What is he saying? And what the Lord is actually doing is he's removing conflict off the table. Because we don't have to be in conflict. You say, well, how do I know that? Well, God's already given you an illustration in 1 Corinthians where he says that we are a member of a body. Your body is not in conflict with one another. But each part of your body functions in a different way, on a different level, on a different frequency. It has a different aperture, all of those things. And so you know when your body is working correctly, everything's fine. Well, so is the body of Messiah. We are supposed to be functioning in concert with one another, not in conflict. So, I think what we're going to do now is, now that I've kind of explained just kind of the basic Greek thinking, let's move on into some very basic ideas about Hebrew.
God made the Bible for everybody, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Scripture you read can mean something for you, but that same scripture may mean something different to me, because he made it for everybody. We're all different.
Right.
So he made that specifically. When you read it, that's specifically for you.
Yes.
And when I read it, it's for me, or for my wife, or whoever's reading that at that time.
Yeah,
He's talking about him.
I'm trying to think what would be a good scripture where you can see that left, right, wrong, where we've argued in the church about. What's a good scripture?
Well, there's a lot of scriptures Abraham has brought up that we've always been taught it means this, and he has discovered that it means something so much deeper and different than what we thought. So I think of some of our interpretation comes from somebody said at some point in history that this is what the scripture means, and we've just perpetuated that throughout history without necessarily looking deeper and saying, what does this actually mean? Like, it's on us to do the research, right? It's on each believer to study the word on their own. And
Yeah.
that includes
Well-
looking at the Hebrew.
Yeah, like Genesis 1, where he says the earth was without form and void. Okay, if you go over to that word, formless, confusion, unreality, emptiness, nothingness, unreal, a wasteland, a wilderness,
Mhm.
a place of chaos, vanity.
Okay.
Okay, so the scribes interpreted it one way, but it could have been not. God could have been saying it was chaos.
Yes,
Not
that is a
formless,
problem.
it was
Chaos, right? That is
right,
that's
but
one of
we,
the
but
words,
the,
right?
but the interpreter, the writer, the scribe, decided to use the meaning formless when God was really saying it was chaotic,
Right.
right?
Yeah, because now the interpreter has to make a choice because he's not going to generally put all of the words
Right,
in there
right.
because one of the examples that in Hebrew is in the word praise. We have one word for praise, but there are actually 10 different words in the Hebrew for praise.
Right.
So,
And love,
and love.
And
So,
world.
but which word do you use
right.
to try to bring out the essence of what you believe that the Lord was saying? And I'm trying to think of a really good
Well,
scripture that
I
shows
think
that.
that's a good point because every word has several different meanings.
Yeah.
And so it really gives you a bigger picture of what God is trying to get across to you.
Yes.
It's not just formless,
Right.
it's chaotic, it's a wasteland.
Yeah.
And so he's saying a lot more than just one
One
thing.
word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, because the Greek, like Brian was saying, the Greek says you can have a literal truth and an allegorical truth, but they can never be true at the same time.
Right. It's a either or.
It's always an either or.
Right.
And a lot of times people will deflect to the allegory because they say, well, that's a lot of most of what the scriptures are. It's fables and blah, 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 blah. So very little of it, or 25%, is only really true.
Yeah.
That's why Jesus spoke to us in parables.
Right.
The parables are not real truths. They're kind of a fable to kind of get you to go down a certain road, kind of, sort of, you know. In other words, I guess what it was showing me was that because of that mindset, that Greek mindset, it tends to put us in this this place of, well, you know, this stuff's probably not really
Either
true.
or. It's either this or
With
it's
that,
this.
yeah.
And-
And if it's mostly allegorical, it's just
Right.
not.
But the
really
Hebrew
true.
mindset is it can be a many
It's
different
huge.
ways because he's
Yes.
circles within the circles, right?
Yes.
He's an infinite God, and he can be pointing out one thing in the Word for that moment,
Mm-hmm.
and in a different season he might point out a different thing.
Yes.
Yeah, talk about that.
Well, the water being turned into wine, from my understanding about it, is it was a literal. It was a little in the Greeks' mindset. It was a literal truth. The
Right.
water was turned into wine, but now the other people have said, well, no, it wasn't real wine. It was grape juice.
But the point is, yes, he turned the water into wine, and also it was a prophetic picture or allegory for things to come.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's both true at the same
Same
time.
time.
It's literal
Mhm.
and it's an allegory at the same time.
Yeah, and part of that is part of that Hebrew lifestyle because wine is a part of the marriage ceremony.
Thank you.
And so because that's a painting, that wine is actually painting a picture of things to come.
Right.
When he finally consummates the Lord coming back, and remember, we're being betrothed to the Lord. He's we're the what am I trying to say?
Bride.
We're the bride,
He's the
and he's the
bridegroom.
husband. He's the
Right.
bridegroom.
And yeah,
And
he
that-
tells his disciples, I'm not going to drink of this cup until I'm with you in the kingdom
In
of
the
heaven.
kingdom, yes.
Yeah.
But you could turn that and say, well, no, he didn't really mean that. He was just trying to show off and just trying to help these guys out in the marriage ceremony.
So I
and
think,
just leave it at that.
right, so I think the point is that reading the word, stop trying to be right or wrong,
Yes,
just stop it.
yes.
That is a Greek mindset.
That's the point. That is the point.
It can
Yes.
it can be literal, and it can be a parable that will teach you a deeper truth.
Yes, but the Greek mindset doesn't allow you to go there.
No,
It says it has to be one or the other.
yeah,
Was this spiritual or was this natural? And if this is natural, then it's not spiritual.
right.
You don't get to do both. They don't cross pollinate. It's no. You don't in a Greek mindset.
What about where Jesus talks about the sower sows the word?
Right.
That
Okay.
whole scenario,
Yeah,
where that was, very spiritual, what he was saying about the stony heart, the seed that was sown on not good ground or good ground, I don't know if that can
Yeah.
be seen as,
yeah. The parable speaks to deeper truths.
right. It speaks to the heart of the people,
Yeah.
whether they're receiving. But some people may just see it as a literal, ground and seed. I don't know if that's a good example or not.
Like building a house in the sand.
Like building a house on a
Okay,
sand.
right.
Yes, it is literally true,
Yeah,
but it's not just all he was talking about.
right.
He wasn't giving instructions on construction of homes.
Right.
On sand.
Right. Right.
But
Exactly.
both true, yes, and spiritually.
Yes.
You build your house on sand, you're in trouble without
Yes.
a foundation,
Right.
which is kind of what you're trying to do right now.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and we'll move on to the next part of our lesson.